What if the woman who changed everything in you wasn't really seeing the real you? Welcome to the dark truth about women. The renowned psychiatrist Carl Jung proposed that both men and women possess an inner feminine and a masculine, which he called the anima and animus. However, he noticed a significant discrepancy between how these archetypes manifest in each gender. In men, the anima is typically represented by an archetype of the ideal woman, while the animus is present as a strong drive toward individuation and self-realization. Conversely, in women, the animus takes the form of an archetype of the ideal man, while the anima is manifested as a desire for union and submission. Jung believed that women unconsciously project their animus into the men they encounter, often idealizing them as the embodiment of their deepest desires for a partner. This projection causes the men to feel elevated and chosen by the woman, leading them to mistakenly believe that they are being loved for who they truly are. But the truth is, the woman is in love with her own fantasy and idealization of the man. He felt like a king being crowned, but it was all just an illusion caused by the woman's unconscious projection onto him. This phenomenon creates a cycle of confusion and even rejection, where men find themselves struggling to maintain the elevated state that the woman has placed them in. When they inevitably fail to live up to her idealization, she becomes disillusioned and may even reject him for not being the person she thought he was. So why do so many men mistake being chosen by a woman as proof of their worth? Jung proposed that women unconsciously project the animus, their inner masculine, onto the men they interact with. This projection leads men to feel like they've been chosen for who they truly are, when in reality they are being celebrated for embodying the woman's ideal image of a man. Think about it. Most men aren't rejected because they're not good enough. They're rejected because they're too perfect, too dreamy, too much of what she wants. And then he believes that he must be doing something wrong when he inevitably fails to live up to her idealization. Being placed on a pedestal and having someone look at you as if you were a god can be quite intoxicating. It feeds the ego and makes you feel validated. But it also creates a strange psychological effect. Jung noted that those who are the recipients of unconscious projections tend to unconsciously play the role expected of them, molding themselves to fit the fantasy of the projector. In other words, the man who finds himself the subject of a woman as idealization will unconsciously begin to behave in ways that reinforce her fantasy, further cementing her projection onto him. So why would an individual unconsciously choose to play such a role? According to Jung, it all boils down to validation. Being the chosen one, the object of someone's intense focus and attention, can feel incredibly validating and even addictive. It's a feeling that many people, especially those with low self-esteem or insecure attachment styles, are desperate for. It's easier to conform to someone as ideal of you than to prove to them that the real you is worthy of love and acceptance. In fact, Jung believed that most men are unconsciously motivated to mold themselves into the image of the woman's ideal man because they crave the validation and affirmation that comes with being seen and chosen. They are willing to perform the role of the masculine king or warrior, whatever the fantasy may be, to receive the love and devotion of the woman. But this isn't just about a man's need for validation. According to Jung, it's also about his journey of individuation, which is the process of becoming your true, authentic self. For a man to break free from his emotional dependency on a woman's idealization and affirmation, he must first confront his inner feminine, the anima, and integrate it into his conscious personality. A man who remains in his unconscious state is like a puppet dancing on the strings of the unconscious projections of others. He lacks the freedom and authenticity that come with true individuality. Jung argued that only when a man integrates his anima does he become free to pursue his personal journey and create his unique path in life. And it's not just men who benefit from integrating their inner feminine. According to Jung, it is through this process that a man's personality becomes more whole, more harmonious, and more resilient. Now, let's talk about women. Why do some women have the power to change everything in a man, but not because they're perfect or flawless? The answer lies in their ability to see and acknowledge the man's inner masculine, his anima. When a woman is integrated, she is able to inspire transformation in the man, helping him to become more of who he is meant to be. She doesn't project her own idealization onto him, but instead allows him to be himself, flaws and all. On the other hand, when a woman is not integrated, she can be a destructive force in a man's life. Her unconscious projection of her animus onto the man creates an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship, causing him to feel trapped and suffocated. He feels like he's constantly failing to live up to her expectations, and he begins to despise the role he's been cast in. So why do some men get lost in a relationship with a woman who isn't right for them? The answer, according to Jung, is validation. Once again, being the chosen one, the center of attention, and the object of someone's intense focus and desire can be incredibly intoxicating. It feeds the ego and creates a sense of importance and power. However, this validation is an illusion. The woman may appear to be giving the man the world, but she is actually only providing him with what he has asked for, what he has unconsciously projected onto her. For example, a man might be attracted to a woman who embodies his ideal image of a perfect partner, but as the relationship progresses, he realizes that she is not perfect at all. She has flaws and weaknesses just like everyone else, but the man continues to stay in the relationship because he doesn't want to lose the validation and affirmation he receives from her. In this scenario, the woman is not to blame for the man's delusion. She is simply reflecting back to him the image he has created in his own mind. Jung believed that it is up to the individual to confront his own unconscious projections and accept himself for who he truly is, flaws and all. Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen someone you became just to be loved? Now let me tell you the most painful truth about women revealed by Carl Jung. It is not uncommon for a man to develop a deep emotional connection with a woman who has had a significant impact on his life, such as his mother or a past romantic partner. He might idealize her, placing her on a pedestal and making her out to be something she's not. In his mind, she's perfect, and the love he felt from her was the greatest he's ever known. However, the truth is that the woman is just an ordinary person with her own flaws and imperfections. The man's intense emotions towards her are actually directed towards his own inner feminine, his anima. He's essentially in love with an archetype, an image he's created in his own mind of what a perfect woman should be. When he meets a woman who embodies this archetype, he becomes infatuated and believes he's found the love of his life. But this kind of love is not based on reality, but rather on the man's own projections and fantasies. So what happens when the man's projections are shattered and he realizes that the woman is not the perfect being he'd imagined her to be? It can be devastating. The man might feel betrayed and heartbroken, as if the woman has stolen a part of his soul. He might even blame her for leading him on and not living up to his expectations. But the truth is, the woman is not to blame. She's simply an ordinary person who happened to trigger the man's unconscious projections. Jung believed that this kind of disillusionment is a necessary part of the journey towards individuation. It's only when we confront our own projections and accept the reality of the situation that we can move forward and become our true selves. Women can be like a spiritual mirror for men, reflecting back to them their own inner masculine and helping them to see themselves more clearly. When a man looks into the eyes of a woman who truly sees him, he might be confronted with aspects of himself that he'd rather not acknowledge, such as his shadow self, his weaknesses, and his flaws. This can be uncomfortable and even painful, but it's also an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. By facing these uncomfortable truths about himself, the man can integrate them into his personality and become more whole, more complete, and more authentic. So the next time you meet a woman who seems to see right through you, don't be afraid to look deeper. She might be trying to show you something about yourself that you've been denying or ignoring. Carl Jung believed that love without individuation is a form of psychological possession. What does this mean? It means that when we fall in love with someone who is nothing more than a projection of our own psyche, we are essentially trying to possess them. We want to control them and shape them into the ideal partner we have in mind. This kind of love is not based on the reality of the situation, but rather on our own fantasies and desires. We become obsessed with the idea of the perfect love we think we deserve, and we try to make our partner into that idea, often to their detriment. Jung believed that true love can only exist when two people are willing to accept each other for who they truly are, flaws and all. Only when we love someone unconditionally, without trying to change them or possess them, can we experience the kind of love that Jung described as transformative and spiritually uplifting. So if you find yourself falling in love with an idea, a fantasy, or a projection of your own psyche, take a step back and ask yourself, am I really in love with this person, or am I in love with the idea of them? Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen someone you became just to be loved? If so, what did you do next?